Welcome to the CS 6725 Section Q presentation on corporate security strategies, presented by Matthew Hinger and Aditya Pandiyaram. Now, without further ado, let's begin by going through some quick introductions. My name is Aditya Pandiyaram. I graduated in 2011 from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign with a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. At the University of Illinois, I specialized in power systems analysis, and specifically, transmission and distribution. Following my graduation from the University of Illinois, I began working at GE Oil and Gas in Boston, Massachusetts. At GE, I am currently on the Edison Engineering Development Program, a 2-year intensive program where candidates not only work full-time, but also pursue a master's degree in a field of their choosing.
I am Matt Hinger. I went to Northwestern University outside of Chicago, graduated in 2011 with a bachelor's in computer engineering. Currently work as an Edison engineer with GE Oil and Gas outside of Boston. Here's an interesting quote that I found. Security is achieved through the everyday actions of employees right across the company. Now what this is saying is that regardless of how good a company's security policies might be, the only way that a company can be successful in corporate security is if the employees themselves know the policies, hold the policies dear to them, and follow the policies that are laid out in order to protect the company. Today we'll be looking at the two main approaches for corporate security. The first is classical, which I'll be talking about first, and the second is the contemporary approach, which Aditya will be talking about in the second half of the presentation. The classical approach to corporate security is comprised of 5 main elements: information security, physical security, network security, risk management, and business continuity. In the following slides, I'll go into each of these 5 elements in much more detail. Information security has been covered very well by our course so far, so I don't want to spend too much time going over things we already know. Information security, as it relates to corporate security, is the protection of corporate information in any form. Now, the idea behind it is that it's trying to prevent unauthorized access, use, disclosure, disruption, modification, or destruction of corporate information and secrets. Now, one of the ways to go about doing this is by marking documents about their sensitivity. Now, when you mark a document with its sensitivity, you usually list the sensitivity level, the access rights, the distribution rights, both within and outside the company, the electronic distribution, the storage, the disposal, and the penalty for deliberate or inadvertent disclosure on the document, most likely in a footer. Now, the purpose behind this is that the document is clearly marked with what level of accessibility and sensitivity it has. That way, someone who gains access to the information has the ability to quickly and easily determine the level of security that the document usually requires. Now, the purpose of all this protection is to provide the corporate information with integrity, confidentiality, and availability. Now, the level of sensitivity that a document is labeled determines who has access to and how to handle the information within that document. And typically, companies use a multi-level system of accessibility, somewhere along the lines of minimal, more, and most sensitive. Information security is composed of 5 main components. They are as follows. Confidentiality is the assurance that information is shared only among authorized persons. Integrity is the assurance that information is authentic and complete. Availability is the assurance that the systems responsible for storing, delivering, and processing the information are accessible when needed. Accountability is holding an individual person responsible for the protection of an information asset. And auditability is being able to determine how your system got to its current location and being able to backtrack the processes that were taken to get there. It also encompasses reviews or audits to ensure that your systems meet the desired requirements of security. Physical security takes many forms. One of the easiest ways to provide physical security is by locking your laptop to your desk or a piece of furniture, and this prevents unwanted theft by making it much harder for a thief to easily walk away with your laptop. Another way is to set up security cameras on the interior and exterior of your office building. Security cameras serve 2 purposes, 1 in crime deterrence and 2 in crime resolution. Another easy way to provide physical security is by having badge access to your building. Badge access, all it requires is a photo ID that the employee carries around with all times while in the building and on the premises, and in order to gain access to the building in various areas inside the building, they simply swipe their badge at the access point and the door will open. Another way to have physical security is by having a thorough bag inspection. This usually takes place either on entrance to the building, exit from the building, or both. The purpose of the bag inspection is to make sure that whoever is in possession of the bag is not trying to sneak any object into the building that isn't allowed, and also trying not to take anything out of the building that isn't allowed. And another way to do physical security is by laptop verification. What this is comprised of is having your photo ID that you have badge access with, then you have another ID that has your picture and the laptop serial number, and then the laptop itself has the serial number on it. Now the point of this is when you're exiting the building, the security officer will be able to verify all three forms of ID and make sure that the laptop you're attempting to remove from the building is actually yours and it is allowed to be in your possession. Laptop protection is a very important part of physical security. Seeing as laptops are very mobile, they are easy targets of theft and therefore easy ways for criminals to gain access to corporate information. One of the simplest ways to protect your laptop is through password protection. Another way to protect your laptop is when you're out traveling and you're using your laptop, you want to make sure you keep it in your possession at all times. If it is not in your possession, then you should have it password locked, and you should also have it physically locked, either to a desk or a piece of furniture in the vicinity, to prevent and deter any possible thieves from trying to steal your laptop by simply walking away with it. Another important piece of information to know when you're dealing with laptop protection is you should try and avoid use at all possible in public areas. Now this may not always be possible, especially with today's business travelers, often in airports or out in public areas on their job. And so if it is not possible, then you want to make sure that you're in a location where you are completely aware of your surroundings. And this allows you to avoid people who are shoulder gazing or basically looking over your shoulder in attempts to see passwords or other information that is up on your screen. And then another very important piece of laptop protection is continuous backup of files. Since laptops are so portable and so mobile, they also stand the risk of being dropped, broken, or stolen a lot easier than a desktop would be. As a result, you want to make sure that you have a continuous backup of your files on a separate hard drive to make sure that if your laptop is broken or stolen, then you have access to all your data, and you also are aware of what data could potentially be leaked should your laptop be stolen. Now, should your laptop be stolen or lost, then there are certain ways to deal with the incident. Obviously, you want to report the incident immediately to the authorities. Upon doing so, then you want to make sure you report it to the appropriate IT or organizational heads as defined by your corporate policies. The purpose of this is to mitigate the chances of leaks sensitive corporate or customer information to whoever stole your laptop. Network security is the process of companies creating a secure network for employees to work on. The purpose of network security is to provide secure systems for employees to work on, and also providing multiple secure channels for the employees to access these systems. Now, network security is comprised of any activities protecting the usability, reliability, integrity, and safety of a network and its data. It is also comprised of the prevention and monitoring of unauthorized access, and making sure that there is authorization methods in order to gain access to the networks themselves. There are various forms of protection methods that a security department could employ when dealing with network security. One of the easiest ways is to install antivirus and anti-spyware software on all company laptops and desktops. Another way is to provide security through hardware systems on the physical network itself. It's things such as firewalls, intrusion prevention and detection systems go along these lines. The point of these being is that the security department would be able to monitor, detect, and prevent the unauthorized access to the network systems as they are occurring. Two other methods of protection are authentication methods, which are the key to providing secure access to the network itself, and virtual private networks, which are very important in today's highly mobile world of corporate work. User authentication methods are typically done in one of two ways: two-factor authentication and single sign-on with a password. Two-factor authentication relies on two things. First, something the user knows, and that is combined with something either the user has or something the user is. Something the user knows is typically a PIN or a password. Something the user has is some sort of token, whether it be a connected token, which the user would actually plug in or swipe on the laptop itself, such as a USB or a smart card, or a disconnected token, which is typically something that the user has in their possession that has a display of various numeric characters on it that is constantly changing. And something the user is some sort of biometrics, whether it's a fingerprint, voice print, or a face print. Now, the typical form is something the user knows and something the user has. And how the security system works is they're prompted at a screen to provide their ID as well as their passcode plus the token code. And so they go in, they log in with their ID, and then at the time they enter their PIN or password in combination with whatever the disconnected token happens to be displaying at the time. Now the system is aware of what each person's token is and what the current display value is on that given point in time, and therefore it can grant access to the system. Single sign-on with the password is the other form of authentication. And what it does is it allows access to multiple yet independent software sites or systems on the corporate network through one channel of authentication. So the idea is you log into the corporate system one time, and then you're granted access to all the other corporate sites and systems. Now, the benefits to this is there's improved user productivity because of the reduction in the need to enter multiple passwords multiple times just to access a few different sites or systems. And then there's also the reduction in human error in password entry, because if the employee has to enter a password 4 or 5 times to access 4 or 5 different systems, their productivity could be decreased should they happen to make a typing error on any one of those 4 sites or systems. Single sign-on also comes with some issues. It is difficult to build a retrofit into certain networks, and that is because some of the sites or systems could be built with completely different authentication methods, and so the single sign-on system has to be able to wrap around all those different systems and provide one high-level form of authentication so that when the user logs in, it can do the authentication on the back end for all the other portals. Another main issue with it is that it provides a single attack point. And now, this is very detrimental to the network security because all a possible thief could have to do is gain access to the user single sign-on and password, and then they'd have access to the entire corporate network. And along similar lines, an unattended desktop provides quite easy access to the single attack point, since if the laptop is left on and logged in, then someone walking up to the laptop could gain access to the corporate systems. Virtual private networks, or VPNs, are another form of network security. The purpose of them is to provide employees with a way to have access to the private networks and its resources from a public network channel. And this allows greater flexibility in employee location, since they could be either off-site or at home and still log into the corporate networks and do their job to the fullest of its potential. Here are some of the approaches to risk management. The goal of risk management is to make sure that you limit the amount of malicious sites or malicious downloads that an employee has access to make sure you provide full protection to your network as a whole. Some of the ways are blocking websites, which are blocking potential and known malicious websites, and sites that are also known to track and store information. You also look to block illegal websites as well as file share websites. And then sometimes companies will also block websites that don't present a legitimate business need to make sure that you're fully productive on your work. Another approach is to block downloads. Now this usually doesn't block all downloads, but will block downloads of a certain file type. The point being, some file types have a much higher probability of being malicious than others. For example, executables. Another way would be to restrict the ads or access to certain websites. And so this just usually is composed of pop-up blockers and ad blockers so that users can't accidentally click on a potentially harmful ad. Another way is trusted website listings combined with website verification. Now, what this includes is a list of websites that the company knows are safe to access, and so no verification is required. For unknown websites, the employee has to log in through a verification system in order to gain access to the websites. Now, this includes a notification to the user that they are accessing a site that isn't trusted and should be mindful of what they are doing. It also allows tracking of the user's internet activity in case that a malicious attack does happen. They can find out what site it was, and they can also find out what the user is doing, who the user is, and then help in resolution of any repairs that might be necessary. And the final topic of the classical approach is business continuity. And business continuity, which we've talked about in this class a little bit, is just making sure that you have your system and company and network set up in a way that if a disaster does occur, you don't lose productivity. And so what you're looking at here is making sure you have server redundancy, data backup, and redundancy. And so both those things serve in case your main server site and data sites are attacked in some way, whether natural or by whatever sort of uprising is occurring, and you don't lose your data, and you also don't have application downtime. Another element is power backup, and that's just to make sure that if you lose power to your main site, that you don't lose productivity of employees, and you also don't lose productivity on your servers, because you have a power backup, the power stays on, and you don't have any loss of productivity. And the last two are location planning, making sure that your location of your office and servers is in a location that stands very limited chance for disasters, whether it's natural or human-based disaster. And the last is you want to have a communication plan in place so that employees are aware of situations that are occurring and know what to do and how to react in the case of that situation.
Now that Matt has taken us through some of the classical security issues that corporations face, let's move forward by looking into some of the more contemporary issues, such as mobile devices and social networks. What is contemporary security? Contemporary security can be classified into three different buckets. The first bucket is virtualization, the next is social networking, and the third, and by far largest bucket, is mobility. Specifically, when I refer to mobility, I'm speaking of the BYOD, or Bring Your Own Device policies that are in effect today in many corporations. For the purposes of this discussion, we'll go through each of these from a very high level, but we'll dive into BYOD and mobility a little deeper because that seems to be the area of growing concern for corporations in 2012 and beyond. The first major bucket of modern security is virtualization. So to really understand virtualization, it's necessary for us to look into some of the numbers behind what's going on in this industry. As of 2012, 68% of corporate workload occurs via virtual machines. Of these, 51.9% of corporations consider their security to be excellent. Now, I put excellent in quotes because it's very hard to define what excellent means. What may be excellent for one company may be only adequate for another. Moving forward, 60% of virtual servers have been shown to be less secure than their physical counterparts. So there's clearly a big disconnect here in terms of what people consider to be excellent and what's actually the case in terms of security for virtual workloads. The key risk behind virtualization is the idea of after-the-fact virtualization of projects. A recent study has shown that 40% of virtualization is completed without the involvement of the original architectural team of that project. This leads to two unique security issues. The first one is blinding of existing security measures. Because these projects are being virtualized without consulting the original team, there's no way for the original team or the virtualization team to truly understand all the security issues that are going to arise when the virtualization takes place. Secondly, there's also the problem of delegation of responsibility. What was originally the responsibility of the architectural team is now being split up among multiple teams that are involved in the virtualization process. The next major bucket in contemporary security is social networking. The main issue with social networks is balancing expectations. 63% of corporations believe that social media puts them directly at risk. Now, the real shocker here is that 29% of corporations believe that they have the necessary security measures in place. So, if such a large percentage of corporations believe that they're at risk, but only 30% believe that they have the security measures in place, what's the issue here? Well, the issue is blocking social media is obviously not an option because that takes away from employee freedom. At the same time, there's no true method by which corporations can go around and police social networks as of today. So one of the solutions that's been brought up for social networks has been the idea of setting expectations early on in the process. And this is actually a fundamental parenting philosophy. Give the kid a toy before they find it themselves and they misuse it. Similarly, give employees the access to social networks, show them how they should be using it, and set an expectation ahead of time as to what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. Additionally, many companies are looking into the development of a new security pillar that allows for dynamic web classification. So dynamic classification not only allows corporations to constantly read and monitor information that's being put into social networks, but it also allows companies to evolve in how they monitor social networking in the future. So this also includes topics such as advanced threat blocking and data theft protection. Next, let's tackle the real beast in the room, mobile security, and specifically, bring your own device policies. From a historical perspective, using mobile devices in the workplace is not a new idea. In the 90s and even early 2000s, devices such as Palm Pilots, Apple Newtons, and even early Blackberries were being thrusted into the workforce. Now, the real difference here has been the idea of bringing in personal devices. So this started recently with the advent of iPhones, iPads, BlackBerry devices, and Windows tablets. Now, I specifically did not include Android on that list because Android is not yet considered to be a trusted operating system among corporate security teams. Now, similar to social networks, mobile devices, personal mobile devices that is, cannot be entirely banned because that takes away from employee satisfaction. Additionally, employees no longer want to carry around multiple devices like the 90s and early 2000s, when employees would either carry around a Palm Pilot and their personal device, or would carry around a BlackBerry and their personal phone. So BYOD has been the single biggest point of concern for contemporary security departments. Commonly, among security teams, BYOD has many colloquialisms such as bring your own danger or bring your own disaster, just because of all the risks that it brings with it. Now let's jump into some of the statistics here. Now some of these stats here are actually a little bit alarming, and this just goes to show just how unprepared corporate security teams are to deal with BYOD. 33% of companies allow unrestricted access to corporate resources simply because they don't understand how to deal with bring your own device policies. 37% apply some level of restrictions, and again, this is actually not bad considering that a third of companies do nothing at all. 19% of companies are terrified of BYOD and don't understand how to work with it, and instead of allowing people unrestricted access to corporate resources, these companies decided to completely ban it. And this actually, in the long run, may be a better idea than allowing a third of the workforce to come in and have unrestricted access to corporate resources. The best aspect of BYOD is MDM, mobile device management, and currently only 11% of companies are utilizing this promising tool. As stated, mobile device management has shown to be the best option for BYOD policies moving forward. To understand this a little better, let's do a deeper dive into MDM and discuss some of the features that MDM offers to corporations. There are many ways in which one can view MDM. The easiest way to view MDM is as a gateway through which mobile devices can access an existing enterprise domain or an existing corporate architecture. Essentially, the MDM has three main components. The server component, which houses the actual MDM logic itself, a client-side component, which executes and runs the MDM management rules, as well as the existing architecture, which is being accessed by the MDM through the client-side portal. One of the biggest advantages of using MDM is the wide variety of features that MDM software packages offer. Now, not all corporations are going to use every aspect of an MDM package, but some of the common ones that are used throughout all corporations that implement MDM include FODA, which stands for Firmware Over-the-Air Updates, Lock and Wipe, Policy Applications, Logging, and Asset Tracking. Now, to give you an example of these, let's move into an actual MDM implementation example. The following set of features is an actual implementation of MDM in a corporate setting. And of course there are a lot more than these few implementations set up here, but these are the main ones, so let's look into them a little further. So first off, MDM offers full device reset and remote wipe capabilities to the corporation. And this is particularly critical because if the device is lost, corporations want to ensure that none of their data on that device is stolen or hacked into by a third party. So in those cases, the corporation will decide to wipe the entire device. Additionally, corporations prefer to install something called profiles on phones. Profiles accomplish a couple tasks. First off, profiles allow corporations to monitor and diagnose any issues that come up with the phone. This includes sending and transmitting data wirelessly, as well as data connections made through the internal ports on the phone. Additionally, profiles allow corporations to block things such as iCloud backup, and as many of you may know, iCloud backup is an automatic backup system that Apple products use to communicate with the iCloud or the Apple Cloud server. Additionally, profiles can accomplish tasks such as blocking unauthorized Wi-Fi, and specifically passwordless Wi-Fi routers. This way, there's no chance of a third party attacking a mobile device through a common access portal. To wrap up our discussion of BYOD solutions, 23% of companies admitted that they had already lost business data due to a lack of proper BYOD policies. Currently, there is no single approach that is thought to be the best approach for BYOD, although, as we have stated, MDM seems to be the most promising solution going forward. How do you automation without shackling device usage? This is a question that keeps coming up among many corporate security teams. And the real answer here is to set expectations initially. When giving employees the initial permissions, make sure employees understand how to use the information they're being given and how to access the data they're being given without misappropriating it. And this is absolutely key when looking at mobile devices. This brings us to the end of the presentation on corporate security strategies. We hope that, during the course of this presentation, you've picked up some useful information. For any questions, concerns, or comments on this presentation or related topics, please feel free to email matthew.hinger@gmail.com or aditya.pandiaram@gmail.com. Thank you.